Saturday night, back in March of 2025. Millions of people across the UK were sitting on their sofas when an 11-year-old boy from Wrexham walked out onto the Britain's Got Talent stage carrying an electric guitar that looked far too big for him. Within seconds he was tearing through AC/DC's Highway to Hell, like a seasoned rock veteran, and by the time he hit the solo from Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, the entire theater was on its feet. Amanda Holden was in tears. Simon Cowell looked genuinely stunned. And a kid named Olly Pearson had just become a national sensation overnight. But the story the cameras showed that night was only the highlight reel. What actually got Olly to that stage started 5 years earlier in a much quieter setting, and it involves a retired grandfather, a driveway full of neighbors during lockdown, and a bond between two generations that television could never fully capture in 3 minutes of footage. The lockdown that changed everything. Olly's story does not begin in a television studio. It begins on a residential street in Wrexham, North Wales, during the COVID lockdowns of 2020. Like a lot of neighborhoods across Britain at the time, Olly's street organized socially distanced driveway get-togethers, small gatherings where people could stay in touch without breaking the rules. At one of these gatherings, a neighbor brought out an electric guitar and started playing. Olly, who was 7 years old at the time, was transfixed. He has since described that moment as life-changing, and it clearly stuck with him because he went straight to the person who could actually teach him. His grandfather, Lee Hughes. Lee had played guitar in his own youth, and when his grandson came to him asking for lessons, he stepped back into the role of musician himself. Because of lockdown restrictions, some of those early lessons reportedly happened over video calls, before the pair were able to sit down together in person and work through chords and technique for real. What followed was years of practice, built not around music theory textbooks but around playing together, song by song, riff by riff. By the time Olly reached his BGT audition, his grandfather was so proud of how far he had come that he openly joked to reporters he didn't so much teach him anymore, because Olly had long since caught up and started teaching Lee a few tricks of his own. That progression from driveway spectator to guitar hero did not happen in isolation either. Olly started performing in public as early as 2022, busking in Chester, where a video of him playing the instrumental Apache ended up racking up more than 15 million views on YouTube, long before Britain's Got Talent ever entered the picture. By the time he strapped on his guitar for producers, he already had real stage experience under his belt, which is a big part of why he looked so comfortable in front of a live audience and 4 intimidating judges. Walking into the audition. When Olly appeared at the Blackpool auditions in early 2025, he came dressed the part, backwards baseball cap, a vest top, and a guitar his granddad had bought him. When the judges asked about his ambitions, he did not hesitate. He wanted, in his own words, to become the best guitarist in the world. Then he plugged in and delivered a medley that ran through Highway to Hell, Van Halen's Jump, and a blistering take on Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, paying tribute along the way to two of his guitar heroes, Angus Young and Eddie Van Halen. The judges' reactions were not staged enthusiasm. Amanda Holden told him, "Literally, a star is born. I have never ever seen anything like that in my life," before slamming her golden buzzer and sending him directly through to the live semifinals. Simon Cowell was just as complimentary, telling Olly he already had a distinct musical sound that most players take decades to develop. For an 11-year-old who had only picked up the instrument 4 years earlier, it was an enormous validation, and it instantly turned him into one of the most talked about acts of the series. The golden buzzer controversy. Olly's semi-final performance in the live shows raised the stakes considerably. He came out with a rock medley featuring Thunderstruck, Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child O' Mine, and Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer, backed by a full production. It was a blistering set, but what happened immediately afterward became just as big a talking point as the performance itself. Series 18 introduced a new twist that year. Alongside the usual audition golden buzzers, each judge was also given one live show golden buzzer to send a semi-finalist straight through to the grand final. The moment Olly's performance ended, Simon Cowell hit his buzzer almost instantly, well before the judges had a chance to give feedback or before hosts Ant and Dec could even properly interview him. Cowell later admitted, "I probably went a little bit early, but I was so excited and it was just so brilliant." It made Olly the third act in the show's history to receive 2 golden buzzers in a single series, following in the footsteps of Patty and Nico and that same series, the dance troupe The Blackouts. Not everyone was thrilled about it. Some viewers online felt it was unfair for one act to receive 2 fast-track passes when other talented finalists had to rely entirely on the public vote to progress. It sparked a genuine debate that followed Olly through to the final, with some fans arguing the show had tipped the scales in his favor before a single vote had even been cast. Olly closed out the Britain's Got Talent Series 18 final, performing a medley of Wings' Live and Let Die and Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, backed by two drummers. It was, by most accounts, one of the standout performances of the night. Bruno Tonioli compared him to a little Brian May, and Amanda Holden called the performance unbelievable and super professional. When the votes were counted, Olly finished in 4th place out of 11 finalists. The night ultimately belonged to Blackpool magician Harry Moulding, who won the £250,000 prize and a slot at the Royal Variety Performance after a finale act built around card tricks, sleight of hand, and a genuinely nerve-wracking skydive stunt performed 12,000 feet in the air. Dance group The Blackouts finished as runners-up, and 9-year-old gymnast Bainita Chetrai rounded out the top 3. For Olly and his grandfather, missing out on the win did not seem to sting for long. If anything, 4th place turned out to be the beginning of an even bigger chapter, one that had nothing to do with television at all. The Paris flash mob that went bigger than the show itself. A few months after the BGT final wrapped, French concert pianist Julian Cohen reached out to Olly with an unusual proposal. Cohen had built a following online for organizing elaborate, surprise flash mob performances in public spaces, and he wanted to put together something ambitious to mark the 50th anniversary of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, which was first released in October 1975. He brought Olly on board alongside fellow BGT semi-finalist Mickey Callisto, who had impressed audiences that same series with his Freddie Mercury-style vocals. On July 10, 2025, roughly 30 musicians and singers assembled around the Place de la Contrescarpe in Paris's Latin Quarter, hidden in cafes, doorways, and upstairs windows. The performance opened quietly with a trio of women singing the opening lines from a first-floor window before Cohen joined on piano below. From there, performers kept emerging from unexpected places, a drummer concealed under a blanket, an opera choir singing down from apartment windows, and Callisto arriving in full Freddie Mercury fashion aboard a horse-drawn carriage. When the song shifted into its heavy rock coda, Olly stepped forward and delivered Brian May's guitar solo note for note, at one point playing the guitar behind his head, while stunned tourists and cafe patrons watched the whole 9-minute production unfold around them. Once the footage hit social media, it spread far beyond anything Olly had experienced on television. Within 24 hours it had racked up 1.5 million views, and it kept climbing from there, eventually being reported at hundreds of millions of views across platforms once combined viewing figures were tallied. It reintroduced Olly to an international audience that had never watched a single episode of Britain's Got Talent, and it cemented his reputation as one of the most exciting young guitarists working today, rather than simply a talent show finalist. Where Olly Pearson is today. Now 12 years old, Olly is still balancing ordinary school life in Wrexham with an increasingly serious music career. He has picked up several equipment endorsements over the past year, including partnerships with Fairclough Guitars, Sken Pro Audio, Patrick Eggle Handmade UK Guitars, and Scott Dixon Guitar Flight Cases. He has also shared the stage locally with the Wrexham rock band The Swillers. The biggest development, though, came in early 2026, when Olly was selected for the Gibson Generation Group, known as G3, a mentoring program run by the iconic guitar manufacturer Gibson for a small group of emerging young musicians from around the world. As part of the class of 2027, Olly receives one-to-one mentoring, instrument support, and performance opportunities over a 2-year period. He performed at Gibson Garage Fest in London in late February 2026, telling reporters afterward that being invited onto the program was an honor and that the mentors treat the group like one big family. His live schedule has continued to grow alongside the accolades. He has appeared as a special guest with the Guns N' Roses tribute act Guns 2 Roses, shared a stage with 80s rock singer Lorraine Lewis, and is scheduled to perform at Bonfest 2026 alongside former AC/DC drummer Chris Slade. Through all of it, Olly's grandfather Lee remains a constant presence, still traveling with him to guitar shows and performances the way he did when Olly was 7 years old learning his first chords in the front room. What started as a driveway lesson during lockdown has turned into an international career that has already outgrown the television show that first introduced him to the world, and if his current trajectory is anything to go by, Olly Pearson is only just getting started. What makes Olly's rise different? It would be easy to file Olly Pearson away as just another viral talent show story, the kind that dominates headlines for a few weeks before fading into the background once the next series begins. But the details of his career so far suggest something more durable is being built. Most child performers who come through televised talent competitions rely almost entirely on the show itself to generate opportunities. Olly's path has worked the other way around. Britain's Got Talent gave him a launchpad, but nearly everything that followed, the Paris Flash Mob, the Gibson mentorship, the tribute band guest slots, the festival bookings, came from people in the music industry actively seeking him out because of the strength of his playing, not because of his status as a reality show finalist. That distinction matters. Julian Cohen did not need a guitarist with a famous name for his Bohemian Rhapsody tribute. He needed someone who could actually deliver Brian May's solo live, in front of a real crowd, with zero room for error. Gibson does not hand out mentoring slots as publicity stunts. The Generation Group program is built around genuine long-term artist development. Musicians like Chris Slade and Lorraine Lewis, who have spent decades on real stages with real bands, do not typically invite a 12-year-old to share a bill unless the talent is unmistakably there. None of that would exist without the groundwork laid years earlier in a Wrexham living room, when a grandfather picked up a guitar again just to keep his grandson interested. It is worth remembering, the next time a headline calls Olly Pearson an overnight sensation, that the overnight part only happened because of everything that came before it.